The string lights were the kind you buy in a big box and staple to a pergola in one afternoon, and under them my cousin Trevor had a glass in his hand and a point to make. He tapped the glass with a ring until the room went quiet. 40-some people, folding chairs and a rented cooler and a cake I had carried in myself. Trevor liked an audience the way some men like a mirror. "Before we do the toast," he said, "we got to do the bit. Everybody, my cousin Addie. Stand up, Addie." I did not stand up. I was already standing, near the back, close enough to the sliding door that the cool came in off the foothills and touched the back of my neck. "She's got a whole character," Trevor said. "You've heard me talk about it. The army thing. Tell them the army thing, Addie. Do the voice." There is a way a family laughs at a joke it has heard before. Low, comfortable. The laugh of people who already know the punchline and just want to hear you say it again so they can feel warm about how well they know you. "Do the voice," Trevor said. "Say your call sign. Come on, she's got a call sign." 2 men stood by the door. I had noticed them earlier without meaning to. You learn to read a certain stillness in people, and both of them had it. The neighbor Trevor kept calling a real colonel, and the woman beside him, who had not said 10 words all night. They had the stillness of people who spend their lives waiting for information. "I don't do a voice, Trev," I said. "She's being modest." He grinned at the colonel by the door, the way you grin at the one guest you actually want to impress. "Say the call sign, 1 time. For me, for my birthday." I had said the word maybe 4 times in 9 years, out loud, to anyone. A room is easier to survive than an argument. I had learned that a long time ago, in this family, at tables exactly like this one, so I said it, flat, the way you set something heavy down on a level surface so it will not tip. Kestrel. For 1 more second the laughter kept going, because that is what laughter does. It runs on its own momentum after the reason for it is gone. Then it stopped, not all at once. It stopped near the door first, where the colonel had been raising a plastic cup halfway to his mouth. The cup came back down. He set it on the shelf behind him without looking at it. The woman beside him turned. Not fast. She turned the way you turn toward a sound you were told all your life you would never hear again. 9 years ago, there had been a hallway with no light in it, except the one on my helmet, and a voice in my own throat counting down, and a weight in my hands that did not care at all whether my family believed in me. "Say that again," the colonel said. Trevor was still grinning. He had not caught up yet. I did not say it louder. I should tell you what I actually do, since Trevor never got it right and I stopped trying to make him. The Army calls it explosive ordnance disposal. Bombs. Specifically the ones that are already built, already placed, already counting, and the specific problem of making them not do the thing they were built to do while you are close enough to touch them. My family calls it filing, paperwork, a desk somewhere with good air conditioning. I stopped correcting them somewhere around the 2nd deployment because correcting them cost me something every time and never bought me anything. I am a major. I have been in for 16 years. I have a badge on my dress coat that most people at that party could not have named, and a folder in a building 3 states away with my name on it, and a stamp that means most of the best day of my professional life is not mine to describe. That afternoon I had driven up into the foothills with the windows down and the cake on the passenger seat in a plastic dome. And I had told myself the same thing I told myself every year. Show up, be pleasant, let them have the version of you that costs them nothing. Leave before it gets late. I was good at bombs, I was less good at that. Colleen met me at the door, Trevor's wife, kind in the tired way of a woman who has thrown a party for a man who will take all the credit for it. I handed her the cake. I told her the yard looked beautiful. It did. She had strung the lights herself, I could tell, because they were even. "He's so glad you came," she said, which was a generous thing to say, and probably not true. My Uncle Hal was already in the good chair with a beer sweating in his fist. Hal is Trevor's father and my father's older brother, and since my father died, Hal has appointed himself the keeper of what the Larkins are and are not. "There she is," Hal said, "our little office soldier." "Hi, Uncle Hal." He looked at my hands when he said the next part. He always looked at my hands. "Real work leaves a mark, sweetheart," he said. "Look at those. Cleaner than mine ever were. You never had to worry about that, did you? Sitting in the cool all day." My mother, Peggy, was on the couch near him, and I watched her not say anything. I was used to that too. She held her wine with both hands like it might get away from her. I looked at my own hands. There's a small white line across the base of my right thumb that I have never explained to anyone in that room, and a stiffness in the last 2 fingers of my left hand that comes back when it is cold, and neither of those things is from filing. I did not say any of that. I said, "You want another beer, Uncle Hal?" He did. I got it for him. That is the part nobody tells you about carrying something. Most of the time, carrying it looks exactly like fetching a beer for a man who thinks your hands are clean. People think steady hands are a gift you are born with. They are not. They are a decision you make 900 times in a training bay until your body stops asking permission. I learned to hold my breathing at a certain rate the way other people learn a second language until I dreamed in it. I learned to narrate my own hands out loud, calm and boring, because boredom is a discipline and panic is a habit, and you get to choose which one you practice. None of that shows at a barbecue. At a barbecue, it just looks like a woman who does not get rattled, and my family read that as coldness, as me thinking I was above them. The truth was the opposite. I had trained the rattle out of myself on purpose, for years, so that on one specific night it would not be there. That is the strange cruelty of a quiet competence. It is invisible right up until the moment it is the only thing in the world that matters, and by then the people who mocked it are nowhere near the room. The people in the room are the ones whose lives depend on it, and they never once mock it, and that turns out to be its own kind of family. The kind you cannot bring home for a holiday and cannot explain when you get there. The thing you have to understand is that the story that I was pretending started before I had anything to pretend about. I was 22 when I got commissioned, 2010. I stood in a hot auditorium in a new uniform, and my father pinned the bar on, and he was proud in the specific way of a man who did not fully believe it would last. Afterward, at the lunch, Hal told the table it was a phase. He said it kindly. That was the terrible part. He said, "Good for her, get it out of her system, she'll come home and do something sensible." And everyone nodded because Hal was the one who decided what the family was, and the family was not people who did this. By the time I actually had a career, they already had a script for it. That is how it works. You cannot argue your way out of a story that was written before the facts arrived. The facts just get filed under exceptions. There were years I missed things. A wedding in 2014, 2 Christmases, a funeral I got to late, in a rented car, in my service uniform, because I had come straight off a plane, and my aunt asked me if I had dressed up for attention. I had flown 19 hours. I had spelled my own name for 3 different desks to get on the manifest. I walked into my own grandmother's service, and the first thing said to me was about attention. They explained my absences the way they explained everything. Her little trips, a desk somewhere warm. She likes the drama of it. My mother told me something once in a kitchen, drying a glass she had already dried. "I never knew how to explain you to them," she said, "so I let them explain you to me." I have thought about that sentence more than she knows. It was the most honest thing anyone in my family ever said to me, and it was also the whole problem. Laid out flat on the counter between us. The wound was never the insults. Insults you can hold. The wound was that the people who were supposed to love me best found it easier to believe the smaller version of me. Not because they were cruel, because the smaller version was less work. The smaller version did not ask them to imagine a hallway with no light in it. The smaller version fetched the beer. So I let them have her. For years I let them have her. I told myself it was discipline. Some of it was, and some of it was just that I was tired, and she was easier to be than the truth. I did try once. I should tell you that, so you do not think I never gave them the chance. About 6 years ago, at a Thanksgiving, I tried to tell my father a little of it before he passed. Not the classified part, just the shape. I said, "Dad, the work I do is hard, and it matters, and I am good at it, and I would like you to know that, even if I cannot tell you the details." And he patted my hand, and he smiled, and he said, "I know you think so, sweetheart. I know you think so." He was not being cruel. He believed he was being kind. He thought he was humoring a daughter who needed to feel important. And I understood in that moment that the box was not a thing I could talk my way out of, because every word I used to describe the real me just got filed as further evidence of how badly I needed the story to be true. So I stopped trying. Not out of anger, out of arithmetic. Trying cost me something every time and never moved the needle, and I had a finite amount of myself to spend, and I decided to spend it on the people who already believed me. That is not bitterness. That is triage. You learn triage in my line of work. You learn to put your effort where it will actually keep something alive. Let me back up to the part of the evening before the dare, because you should see the two people by the door the way I saw them before the room did. Trevor had a new neighbor. He had mentioned it 3 times in the first hour, the way you mention a thing you want asked about. Finally, somebody asked. "He's a colonel," Trevor said, loud enough to carry. Curtis Rhodes, moved in across the cul-de-sac in the spring. A real colonel. Army. Not everybody just says they did, you know. Some people actually did the thing. I was refilling a bowl of chips when he said that last part, and I did not look up because I did not need to. I had been not looking up my whole life. Trevor brought them in around 9, the colonel and a woman he introduced as the colonel's friend, also fancy, also army. Her name was Sato. She wore civilian clothes the way some people wear a uniform, even when they are not in it, like the posture is load-bearing. I knew the shape of them before I knew anything else. There is a stillness that people who have carried real weight never fully put down. They stand a little squared. Their eyes do a slow sweep of a room and file the exits without meaning to. Rhodes had it. Sato had it more. I stayed at the edge. That is a skill, too. You would be surprised how invisible you can make yourself in a room full of people who have already decided you are not worth looking at. 9 years ago, in a country I'm not going to name here, there had been an operations floor lit the color of a bad headache, and a colonel who was then a lieutenant colonel standing over a table looking at a problem that had no good answer on it. The problem was mine to solve. They had called my team forward because there was no one else close enough with the qualification, and the clock on the thing was not a metaphor. Sergeant First Class Milo Kane was at my shoulder in that memory, the way he was for 2 years. Kane was the best set of hands I ever worked next to. He was the one who, when I told the team to fall back to the vehicles and let me take the last part alone, did not argue in front of the others. He waited until they had turned. Then he said, "Lo, ma'am, I go where you go." And I told him no. I told him somebody had to be able to carry the story back, and it was going to be him. I want to give you a little of what that world is actually like, because people imagine it wrong. They imagine noise and shouting and a countdown clock with big red numbers. Mostly it is the opposite. Mostly it is a quiet room full of tired people being extremely careful. An operations floor at 3 a.m. is one of the calmest places on earth, because everyone in it has learned that calm is a tool and not a feeling. There were screens and a map and coffee gone cold in paper cups, and a lieutenant colonel named Rhodes standing over a table with his hands flat on it, not because he was relaxed, but because a leader who keeps his hands still keeps a room still. Sato ran the operations that fed the floor. She was the one who knew, at any second, where every piece was and what every piece was for, and she had a way of saying a hard thing in a completely flat voice that made it possible to hear. When my team got called forward, it was Sato who said it, and she said it the way you would ask someone to pass the salt, and that flatness was a gift, because it let me pick the problem up without the weight of everyone's fear stuck to it. You do not remember those nights as loud. You remember them as slow and quiet and lit the wrong color and full of people who trusted you with the one thing you cannot give back if you drop it. Kane at my shoulder, Rhodes with his hands flat on the table, Sato's flat voice in my ear. That was the room. That was the family Trevor did not know I already had. The one that does not laugh at the uniform because they have seen what is under it. That is as much of that night as I am allowed to give you. I want you to notice something, though. The 2 people standing by my cousin's sliding door, sipping wine out of plastic cups under a string of even lights, were the 2 most senior people who had been in that room 9 years ago. Rhodes had run the floor. Sato had run the operations that fed it. They were the ones who signed the paper that made the whole thing disappear. The one man Trevor most wanted to impress was the one man in the state who knew exactly what my call sign cost. Trevor did not know that. Trevor thought he had a soldier and a make-believe soldier in the same backyard, and only one of them was real. Here's the thing about a bit that lands. It gets bigger. It feeds on the laugh. Trevor had gotten a laugh with the office soldier line at dinner, so by dessert, he was building. He is not a cruel man. I want to be fair. He is a man who found out young that he could make a table laugh, and never learned that there is a difference between a table laughing with you and a table laughing at someone you have handed them. "You guys don't even know," he told the colonel, delighted, pulling me into the light by talking about me instead of to me. "She's got the whole thing. The bag, the boots. She showed up to Easter one year in the uniform. I told her, 'Addie, you can buy those online. That doesn't make it real.' The laugh came, warm and low, the family laugh. 'Bought the uniform online,' Hal repeated, shaking his head, pleased. 'That's the one. That's the good one.' I stood there and let it happen. I want to be honest about that. I was not brave in that moment. I was practiced. There is a difference, and the difference is that practice does not cost you anything in the moment and costs you everything later. In the car, alone, on the drive down out of the hills. She thinks she's a real soldier, Trevor said, and he was looking at Rhodes when he said it, checking the scoreboard, wanting the colonel to be in on the joke with him. Tell them, Addie, do the whole thing. What do you even do all day? Staple stuff? I saw Colleen close her eyes. I saw my mother set her wine down very carefully on a coaster, both hands like the glass had become dangerous. And I saw the colonel not laugh. That is the detail Trevor missed because Trevor was looking at the part of Rhodes that was a trophy and not the part that was a man. Rhodes had gone still, not offended still, alert still. The still of someone who has just heard one wrong note in a song and is now listening very hard to everything. 9 years ago, I had knelt in the dark with a thing in front of me that had a number on it, and I had made myself breathe slow, and I had counted, out loud, in my own ear. Because the sound of your own voice staying level is the last tool you have when everything else is gone. I had a word I said to myself at the end of the count. Everybody who does that job has one. Mine was the call sign. You say it and it means, this is who is doing this, and she is still here, and her hands are steady. Kestrel. Back in Trevor's great room, he said, say your call sign. And the two things came together, the party and the hallway, the joke and the count, and I understood that I had a choice, and that I had actually had it for years and just kept declining it. The smaller they asked me to be, the larger the thing I was not allowed to say. That is a very specific kind of pressure. It does not have a name in the manuals. It is the weight of a truth you are not permitted to use in your own defense. Let me try to describe what that actually feels like, standing in it, because it is the center of this whole story, and I do not want to rush past it. Imagine you are holding a stone. Nobody else can see the stone. You have carried it so long that your arm has built itself around the shape of it, and holding it is just what your arm does now. And a room full of people you love is laughing at you for having a weak arm. And you could open your hand and show them the stone, and they would stop laughing instantly. But you made a promise not to open your hand, so you stand there, arm trembling, and you let them think you are weak, and the whole time the reason your arm is shaking is that it is doing the single hardest thing in the room. That was every family gathering for 9 years. Trevor's birthday was just the loudest one. I stood in the middle of that great room while my cousin built his routine, and I ran the calculation I always ran. If I said nothing, the joke would land, the family would feel warm and close, and I would drive home with a familiar ache. If I said something, if I even hinted, I would break a promise that was not only mine, and I would trade my family's comfort for my own. And I had decided a long time ago that my comfort was not worth more than my word. So the math always came out the same. Say nothing, absorb it, drive home. What was different that night, and I did not fully understand it until later, was that the math had quietly changed without my noticing, because 2 of the 4 people alive who could confirm the truth were standing by the door. For the first time in 9 years, I was not the only keeper of the stone in the room. And some part of me, older and more tired than the part that runs the calculation, felt that and relaxed a single notch and decided it was done doing the little trick to keep a peace that had only ever been peaceful for everyone else. I did not plan to be rescued. I want to be clear about that. I did not see the colonels and think, now I can finally win. I had made my peace with never winning. I had made peace with it so thoroughly that peace was the whole of my personality at these things. But there is a difference between making peace with carrying a thing alone forever and being handed the smallest evidence that you might not have to, and that difference is enough to change a person's posture in a room even before they know it has. I stepped away from the light for a second, over by the drinks, and my mother followed me. "You don't have to do his little show," she said quietly. "I know." "Then don't." I looked at her, 65 years old, holding a paper napkin she had folded into a small, tight square, without noticing she was doing it. "You could just tell them," she said. "All of it, whatever it is. You could just once let them have it." And that was the whole knot, right there, in one sentence, from a woman who loved me and had spent 30 years letting other people describe me to her. "Some of it was never mine to tell, Mom," I said. "That is the part nobody understands. It is not that I am being humble. It is that there is a version of me that other people decided you were not cleared to know. And I have spent 9 years agreeing with them, because agreeing with them was the deal. And the deal is how Cain and the rest of them got to come home." She did not understand all of it. I watched her not understand it. And I watched her decide for the first time in a long time to believe it anyway. There is a difference between understanding someone and believing them, and the second one is the one that actually holds weight. "I am not going to argue with Trevor," I said. "Arguing is what you do when you need to be believed. I stopped needing that a while ago. I really did." "So what are you going to do?" I thought about it. I looked back at the room, at Trevor with his glass, at Hal in the good chair, at 40 people waiting for the family soldier to do her little trick, and at 2 people by the door who had gone quiet, in a way the room had not noticed yet. "I am going to answer his question," I said, honestly, one time, and then I am going to let the night be whatever it is going to be. That was the decision. It did not feel like a decision. Real decisions rarely do. They feel like the moment you stop holding a door shut and just let it swing. I looked once more at my mother, at the little folded napkin, at the fear in her face that I was about to get hurt again in front of everyone. And I wanted her to know I was not walking into the joke to be a martyr. I put my hand on her shoulder. "Watch," I told her very quietly. "Not what he does. Watch what happens at the door." She did not understand me. She looked toward the door, at the neighbor and his friend, 2 strangers in nice clothes holding plastic cups, and then she looked back at me, confused. That was all right. She did not need to understand yet. She just needed to be looking in the right direction when it happened, so that later she would know I had seen it coming, that I had chosen this, that for once the family soldier was not being ambushed, but was walking, calm and clear-eyed, straight into the center of the thing. I walked back toward the center of the room, calm, my hands, the clean ones, the ones that were supposedly too clean for real work, were perfectly steady. They are always steady. That is not a personality trait. That is 900 hours of training and one very long night. And it is the one thing about me nobody at that party would have guessed, and the only thing that had ever really mattered. "Okay, Trev," I said. "You want the call sign?" He lit up. He thought he had won. "I want the call sign," he said. So I said it. "Kestrel." I did not perform it. I said it the way you say a name at a grave. Quiet, level, complete. And I watched it cross the room and hit the 2 people it was never supposed to reach. Rhodes had a cup in his hand. He did not drop it. Movies are wrong about that. People who have held real weight do not drop things. He set it down. He set it on the shelf behind him without looking, the way you set down anything when your whole attention has just been requisitioned by something more important. Then he came off the wall. He had been leaning. He stopped leaning. Sato turned all the way around. She had been half facing the door, half facing the yard, the posture of someone keeping a lane. She came off that lane and faced me, and her face did the thing I had seen on exactly 2 other faces in my life, both of them in that lightless country 9 years ago. It is not shock. Shock is loud. This was the opposite. It was everything going very quiet and very organized behind the eyes at once. The room did not understand yet. Trevor was still grinning. He had heard the word. To him it was the punchline. He had gotten his cousin to do the bit, And now he waited for the laugh, which is the tragic thing about Trevor. He was already reaching for the laugh when the floor had already gone out from under it. "Say that again," Rhodes said. It was not loud. It cut straight through the room anyway, because it was the only sentence in the yard being spoken by a man who meant it with his whole body. I looked at him. I had not looked at him directly all night. I looked at him now, and I let him see that I knew exactly who he was, and that I had known since he walked in, and that I had said nothing, because saying nothing was the habit of 9 years, and also, that night, a small mercy I had been extending to my cousin without his ever knowing it. "You heard me the first time, sir," I said. For a moment, nobody moved. 40 people in a backyard, and the only sound was the string lights buzzing very faintly and a car going by somewhere down the hill. Rhodes crossed the room. He did not march. He did not make it a ceremony. That is the part I keep coming back to, because if he had made it a ceremony, Trevor could have survived it, the family could have folded it into a funny story. Remember the time the colonel did the salute thing at your party? But Rhodes did not give them a ceremony to hide behind. He just walked across his neighbor's great room, around the coffee table, past Hal in the good chair, and he stopped in front of me and he stood there. One professional in front of another, and then he turned so that his shoulder was next to mine and we were both facing the room, and he spoke to Trevor. "I want to make sure I understand the joke," Rhodes said. His voice was even. That was the frightening thing about it for them. It was completely even. "You have been telling this room all night that your cousin plays pretend, that she bought her uniform online, that she is not a real soldier." Trevor's grin was still on his face, but it had stopped meaning anything. It was just muscle now. "I mean, it's a bit. We do a bit. That call sign," Rhodes said, "has been classified for 9 years. I know that because I am one of the people who classified it. There are 4 people at this party who are cleared to know what it refers to, and 2 of them just walked in with me, and one of them is standing right here, and it is not you." Sato had come across the room, too, quietly, and taken up a position on my other side. She did not say anything at first. She did not have to. 2 colonels standing on either side of the family joke is a sentence all by itself. Hal, in the good chair, said the thing that people always say, the thing they cannot help saying. "Well, what did she do? What was it?" And Rhodes looked at him, this old man who had spent an evening admiring a real colonel while telling that colonel his own cousin was a fraud. And something in Rhodes' face was almost gentle, because I think he understood, in that second, the whole architecture of it. How a family builds a small, comfortable box and puts a person in it and never once thinks to check whether the person outgrew the box years ago. "I can't tell you what she did," Rhodes said. "That is the entire point. I am not allowed. She is not allowed. She has stood in this family for 9 years and taken whatever you handed her, and she never once used the one thing that would have ended it, because she was not permitted to, and because, I would guess, ending it was never worth more to her than keeping faith with the people she did it with." He let that sit. "What I can tell you," he said, "is that I have commanded a great many people, and I would put her hands, on the worst day of my career, ahead of almost anyone I have ever served with." Now, somebody said something about her hands being clean. Nobody breathed. Hal had said it. Hal knew everyone knew he had said it. "Her hands," Rhodes said, "are the steadiest hands I have ever stood behind. I have watched them work. You should be so lucky as to have hands like that in your family." I would love to tell you the room erupted, that there was applause, that Trevor wept, that Hal rose from the good chair and embraced me, and everyone learned a valuable lesson set to swelling music. That is not how it goes in real life. In real life, a room like that does not erupt. It deflates, slowly. The air goes out of the joke, and there is nothing to replace it with. So people just get quiet and study their cups and try to figure out how to be somewhere else without physically leaving. Trevor tried to save it. Of course he did. It was his instrument, the save, the pivot back to laughter. Okay. Well, why didn't you just say something?" he said. And he laughed, but it was a laugh looking for company and not finding any. "That's on you, right? A little bit, if it's such a big deal. You let me. I didn't. How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't," I said. And I meant it. That is the part I want you to hear. I was not being sharp. I was telling him the truth, which was worse. "You weren't supposed to know," I said. "That was the whole point, Trev. I never needed you to know. I needed you to be my cousin. That was all I ever wanted from you. I did not need you to be impressed. I just would have liked one time for you to give me the benefit of the doubt you hand to total strangers who tell you they did the thing." Colleen had a hand over her mouth. Hal was looking at his own beer like it had done something to him. "What did she do?" Hal said again, quieter now, not to Rhodes, almost to himself. He could not let go of it. It is a very human thing, to need the story, to need the shape of the thing so you can file it. If he could just know what she did, he could put it somewhere. "Her job," Rhodes said. "Better than almost anyone I have ever commanded. That is the whole citation you get, sir. That is the whole citation any of us get." And that silence, the classified silence, the one where the colonel could have made me a hero in front of my family with 3 sentences and instead chose to protect the thing I had spent 9 years protecting, that silence told them more than any story could have. Because a story they could have doubted. A story they could have shrunk, the way they shrink everything, into her little trips, into the drama of it. But they could not shrink a silence held by 2 colonels who clearly knew and clearly would not say. The withholding was the testimony. The locked door said more than an open one ever could. My mother was crying, not loudly. She was just sitting on the couch with tears running down and that little folded napkin pressed to her mouth. And she was looking at me like she was seeing a photograph develop, like the person she had let other people describe to her for 30 years was slowly resolving into focus right there in Trevor's great room. Sato leaned in, close to my ear, so only I could hear it. "Kane made Master Sergeant," she said. "2 years ago. He asks about you. I never knew what to tell him because I never knew if you were doing okay. I am going to tell him you are doing okay." She paused. "You are doing okay, Major, aren't you?" "I am now," I said. And that was true, too, in a way it had not been true 1 hour earlier. Around me, the party was reorganizing itself into small, stunned clusters. Trevor's wife, Colleen, came and stood next to me and did not say anything for a while. And then she said quietly, "I laughed at those jokes for years, at the table. I want you to know I know that. I am not going to pretend I was on your side the whole time. I wasn't. I just thought they were harmless." And I told her that was the most useful thing anyone had said to me all night, because it was true, and because she was not asking me to absolve her. She was just refusing to lie about it anymore. That is rarer than an apology and worth more. One of the younger cousins, a kid of about 19 who I barely knew, came up to me by the drinks table with the specific courage of someone who has had exactly 1 beer. "So the whole time," he said, "the whole time everybody was doing the bit, you just let them?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Why?" And I thought about how to answer that in a way a 19-year-old would keep, and I said, "Because the people I made the promise to were more important than the people in this room, and because you cannot make somebody respect you by demanding it. You can only make it expensive to keep disrespecting you and then wait and let them decide." He nodded like I had handed him something, and maybe I had. I hope he keeps it. I wish someone had handed it to me at 19 instead of at 38. I went out onto the porch after that because I needed air and because a room that is just deflated is an exhausting place to stand in. You become responsible for everyone's discomfort. They look at you to know how to feel, and I did not have the energy to manage 40 people's feelings on top of my own. The foothills at night are very dark and very quiet. You can hear the creek that runs behind Trevor's development, and past that, nothing. Just the big black shoulders of the hills and a sky with more stars than people who live under streetlights ever get to keep. I want to tell you what it actually felt like, because the movies get this wrong too. It did not feel like winning. I have thought a lot about why. The closest I have come is this. When you carry something alone for a long time, it becomes part of your posture. You build your whole stance around the weight. And when someone finally reaches over and takes it off you, even for a second, even someone you trust, your body does not feel relief first. It feels exposed. It feels the cold place where the weight used to be. It takes a while for that cold place to feel like freedom instead of loss. I stood on the porch and I felt the cold place. I thought about the hallway. I am not going to give you the operation. But I can give you the shape of the cost, because the cost is mine. The cost was never classified. I can tell you that I sent 4 people back to the vehicles that night and walked the last 40 meters by myself, and that the walk took a very long time, longer than 40 meters has any right to take. I can tell you that I knelt down in front of a problem and I made my voice stay level, out loud, in my own ear, Counting, because the sound of your own steady voice is a rope you throw to yourself. I can tell you that at the end of the count I said one word. My word, the word Trevor, turned into a party trick, and that I said it because it meant I am still here, and my hands are steady, and this is who is doing this. And I can tell you that the thing did not do what it was built to do, and that a village that did not know my name and never would got to wake up the next morning, and that Milo Kane got to make Master Sergeant and ask about me at reunions, and that 4 families did not get a knock on the door. That is the shape of it. That is what I get to keep. And here's what it cost, the part that has nothing to do with any file. It cost me the ordinary version of myself, the one who could have gone to Easter and just been a cousin. After that hallway, I was not able to be small in the easy way anymore. I could still be quiet, I could still fetch the beer, but there was always a locked room in me now, and my family could feel that there was a locked room even though they could not see inside it. And I think, honestly, some of the mockery over the years was them knocking on that door the only way they knew how. Hal telling me my hands were clean. That was a man standing outside a locked door, throwing the only rock he had. My mother came out onto the porch. She did not say anything for a while. We just stood there and listened to the creak. I should have believed you, she finally said. All those years, I let them tell me who you were. I was your mother, and I let other people write you. I know, I said. I did not tell her it was fine. It was not fine, and she did not need me to lie to her. She needed me to be honest with her, which was the whole thing I had been asking the family for all along, so I was not about to withhold it from the one person finally offering it back. It is not fine, I said, but it does not have to keep being true. You can start now. Tonight counts. Tonight you believed me before you understood me. Out there, I watched you do it. That is the whole thing, Mom. That is all I ever wanted. Not the medal, not the story. Just for one of you to decide I was telling the truth before you had proof. She took my clean hand in both of her old ones, and she turned it over and looked at the small white line across the base of my thumb that I had never explained, and she did not ask. She just held it, and for the first time in about 9 years, somebody in my family was holding my hand, knowing they did not get to know everything about it, and holding it anyway. That is love, I think. Not the version that needs to know everything. The version that can hold a locked door and not resent it. People trickled out after that, the way people leave a party that has had its spine removed. There were a lot of quiet goodbyes and not much eye contact. A few of the cousins hugged me on the way out and did not know what to say. So they said, "It was good to see you," which is what you say. And I let them, because they were not the ones who had built the box. They had just laughed at it because it was easier than not laughing. Rhodes and Sato were among the last to go. Rhodes found me by the door. He did not do anything dramatic. He put out his hand, and I shook it, and he held the shake for a second longer than a normal handshake, which between two people who do that job is its own small language. "You still owe nobody an explanation, Major," he said. "Least of all them. You understand me? Tonight did not put you in debt to anyone. If anything, the arrow points the other way." He glanced back into the house, where Trevor was stacking cups with the concentrated focus of a man who very badly needs a task. "Go easy on the kid, though. He is going to be up all night. First time in his life he has ever been the one holding the wrong end of a joke. It is a hard thing to learn at 40. "I'm not going to do anything to him," I said. "I never was. That was never the plan." "I know," Rhodes said. "That is why I said it. Men like me have to be told to go easy. Women like you already went easy 9 years ago and never stopped." He almost smiled. "Sato has your contact now. Kane is going to call you. Take the call." "I'll take the call." Sato paused at the door on her way out and looked at me, and there was a whole conversation in that look that I am not going to be able to write down, because it was in a language that only exists between people who were in a certain room on a certain night and came out the other side of it. Then she said the most ordinary thing in the world. "Drive safe getting down the hill," she said. "The switchbacks are bad in the dark." "Copy," I said. And they were gone, 2 colonels folding themselves into an ordinary sedan and pulling out of a cul-de-sac in a subdivision in the foothills, going back to their ordinary lives, which is the thing nobody understands about people who have done extraordinary things. Mostly they are just driving home. Mostly they are just telling you to watch the switchbacks. Trevor caught me before I left. He had the cups in a trash bag and his tie undone, and he looked for the first time all night 40 years old instead of 14. "Addie," he said, Man, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say it tonight," I said. "You'll get it wrong tonight. Say it in a week when you've thought about it." Was it really that big a deal, what you did? Oh, and there it was, one more time. The need for the story, the need to know the size of the thing so he could feel the right amount of bad about it. "Trev," I said, "it does not matter how big it was. That is what I need you to actually hear. If it had been small, you still shouldn't have spent 9 years telling a room I was a liar. The size of what I did is not the point. The size of what you assumed is the point." He nodded slowly. I do not know how much of it landed. But he nodded, and he did not try to make a joke, and for Trevor, not making a joke is the single most sincere thing he is capable of. I decided to count it. I hugged him. He was stiff about it, and then he wasn't. "Happy birthday," I said. "I mean it. 40 looks good on you. Go be 40. I drove down out of the hills with the window down. The switchbacks were bad in the dark. Sato was right, and I took them slow. One hand loose on the wheel the way you drive when you are not in a hurry to be anywhere, and you just want the road to give you time to think. The cold came in the window and smelled like pine and dust and the end of summer. My headlights caught the reflectors on the guardrail one at a time. Little green sparks, a runway of them curving down the mountain. Somewhere around the third switchback, I realized I was saying it out loud. The call sign, just to myself, in the car, in the dark, Kestrel. And it did not have any weight on it. For 9 years, that word had been a locked box, a thing I said maybe 4 times, a thing that meant hold the line, keep the faith, do not let anyone in. And now it was just a word. My cousin had dragged it out into a backyard and tried to make it a joke, and 2 colonels had walked across a room and made it true again. And somewhere in between, it had stopped being a wound and gone back to being what it was originally, which was just a name I gave myself on a bad night so I could stay steady. You do not get many moments in a life where you feel a thing you have carried get lighter in real time. I got one on those switchbacks. I want to be honest that it was not pure joy. It was also grief. For the 9 years, for the Easters, for the funeral where I got asked if I dressed up for attention, for all the times I chose the smaller version of myself because the smaller version kept the peace and the larger version had a locked room in it that scared people. You do not get those years back. Nobody hands them back to you. The best you get is to stop giving away the ones you have left. I got home a little after 1 in the morning. I did not sleep much. That is normal for me after a big night. Big in either direction, good or bad. I lay there and I let the whole evening play back, and I let myself, for once, not manage it. Just feel it. The text from Trevor came in the morning. I want to give it to you exactly, because it is the most honest thing my cousin has ever sent me, and it took him, I found out later, about 2 hours to write. It said, "I've been up all night. I keep thinking about the thing you said. Not the size of what you did, the size of what I assumed. I don't have a joke for it. I've been the funny one my whole life, and I used you to be funny, and I never once asked if it cost you anything. It did, didn't it? I'm sorry, Addie, not the fast kind, the real kind. I'd like to try to actually know you, if you'll let me. I know I have to earn that." I read it 3 times. Then I did something I had not done in a very long time. I let a text from a family member make me cry. I wrote back. It cost me some. Yeah. But last night gave a little of it back. I'd like that. Start by asking me a question sometime that isn't a setup for a joke. That's all. We can go slow. He wrote back 1 word. Deal. Kane called 2 days later. Sato had kept her word. Master Sergeant Milo Kane, the best set of hands I ever worked next to, the man who said, "I go where you go," and then let me send him back so somebody could carry the story home, called me on a Tuesday evening, and when I picked up, neither of us could talk for a second. "Ma'am," he finally said, and his voice was not steady, and I loved him for it. "Colonel Sato says you're doing okay. She says some idiot at a party finally made you say the word." "My cousin," I said. "It's a long story." "I got time. I always got time for you. You know that." A pause. "I never knew if you were all right all these years. That was the hard part. They sealed the whole thing, and then everybody scattered, and I'd think about it, about that night, about you walking off by yourself, and I'd have no way to know if you came out of it okay on the inside, because you came out okay on the outside. But that's not the same thing. You taught me that, actually, that those aren't the same thing. I'm okay, Milo, I said. I really am. More this week than last week, but I'm okay. You still got the steadiest hands in the army. You're the one who taught me to keep them warm in the cold, I said, and he laughed, wet, and we talked for an hour about nothing, about his kids, about a guy we both knew who was getting out, about the ordinary furniture of two lives that had once shared the worst and best night either of us would ever have. And when we hung up, I sat in my kitchen in the last of the evening light, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, connected to the whole of my life at once. The part the family knew and the part they didn't. Both of them in the same body, in the same kitchen, no locked room between them for one evening. My mother called that weekend. She has never been a caller. She's a woman who waits for you to call her and then acts surprised. But she called me, and she asked me a question she had never asked in 38 years. "Tell me about your job," she said. "Whatever you're allowed to. I want to know what you actually do." I should have asked a long time ago. I'm asking now. So I told her. The parts I could. I told her what the badge on my coat means. I told her, in general terms, about the training, about the discipline, about the specific strange calm of the work, about how it is mostly not like the movies. Mostly it is patience and checklists and staying boring on purpose, because boring is how everyone goes home. She listened. She asked follow-up questions. She got some of the words wrong, and I corrected her gently, and she wrote them down. I could hear the pen. My mother, 65 years old, taking notes on her own daughter, 9 years late, and every scratch of that pen was worth more to me than the two colonels crossing the room, because the colonels already knew. My mother was choosing to learn. Hal has not called. I do not expect him to. Some people cannot walk back a 30-year position without the whole scaffolding of their identity coming down, and Hal built his identity on being the man who decides what the Larkins are. Maybe he will surprise me. Colleen tells me he has been quiet, that he did not tell the bought the uniform online story at the next family thing, that when someone started to, he changed the subject. That is a very small thing. From Hal, it might be an apology. I am choosing to receive it as one. You get to decide what to accept as an apology, and I have decided to be generous. Because generosity costs me less than resentment, and I am tired of paying for resentment. I went back to work the next week. There was a folder on my desk and a problem in it that no one else on the installation could touch, which is my whole life. That sentence, a problem no one else can touch. I put my hands on it. They were steady. They are always steady. But something was different, and I could feel it, and it took me a few days to name it. For 9 years, I had done the work with a locked room inside me and told myself the lock was the price of the work, and it was not. The lock had never been about the work. The classification was about the work. The lock was about my family, about the parts of me I had walled off because the people who were supposed to love me had made it clear those parts were unwelcome. Those are two different locks. One of them the army put on, and I will carry it to my grave. And that is fine. That is the deal. That is the faith I keep with Cain and the rest. The other one I put on myself a long time ago at a lunch where a man said good for her, she'll get it out of her system. That second lock came off in a backyard in the foothills. And I did not even open it myself. My cousin picked at it as a joke, and two colonels reached over and lifted it, and my mother, finally, held the door. I want to say one thing to you, whoever you are, before I go. Maybe you are the person in your family who got assigned the smaller version of yourself a long time ago. The one they decided about. Maybe you have a locked room too, and maybe it is not even a secret. Maybe it is just the whole size of you, the real dimensions that the people around you found inconvenient and quietly agreed to ignore. And maybe you have spent years being the smaller version because the smaller version keeps the peace, and the larger version makes people uncomfortable. And you are tired, and small is easier. I need you to hear this from someone who did it for 9 years. You do not owe them a performance. When they ask you to do the little trick, to be the joke, to shrink down to the size of the box they built, you are allowed to simply decline. Not with a fight. A fight is what you do when you still need them to believe you. And the day you stop needing that is the day you get free. You just answer honestly, one time. And you let the night be whatever it is going to be. And here is the other half, the half I did not believe for most of those 9 years. The truth keeps its own appointments. You do not have to drag it into the room and make it perform either. You do not have to prove yourself. You just have to keep doing the work, keep your hands steady, keep faith with the people who are in the room with you. And the truth will show up. Usually late. Usually in a way you did not plan, in a backyard, on a dare, from the mouths of people you did not invite. But it shows up. It always shows up. It is the most patient thing there is. I said one word at my cousin's birthday party. I said it flat, the way you set something heavy down on a level surface. And it turned a whole room, and I never had to raise my voice, and I never had to open the door the army locked. And I never had to become someone other than exactly who I already was. My name is Adrienne Larkin. I am a major in the United States Army. My hands are steady. And that is the whole citation any of us get.